everybody. It's Saturday, and this is our weekly quick read of Data Download. We try and just take a moment on the Saturday morning when the newsletter goes out to just explore it a little bit, tell you some stories behind it, give you a little bit of a narrative of how the newsletter this week got made. And this week is actually surprisingly interesting and a great read. If it's in your inbox, terrific. And if it's not, then here, you can just go ahead and grab it and add it to your newsletter reading either on Monday or Sunday or over the weekend. But let's just start at the very, very beginning. This week is fascinating. It's Saturday, and we are right in between the Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention, both of which are going to be done in some way, shape, or form virtually. Not entirely clear, how different the RNC will be. We'll see that next week. But I just have to say, as somebody who spent a lot of time in my life producing television, there were an enormous number of things that could have gone terribly wrong with the DNC. And I have to say, I went into it with fairly low expectations. I mean, managing feeds from 57 locations is no joke. Everybody's got different bandwidth. Everyone's got different hardware. Everyone's got different skill levels. Everyone has different help. And there's a picture up on the screen of Glenn Weiss, who is the director of all 4 nights from his living room / studio in Glendale, California. It's a great story. And then, as you move through the newsletter, the New York Times has a fantastic, really good read. And the headline is "The MVP of this year's conventions, the digital and IT teams." And, I'll just at the very top, making sure live streams don't lag, sending out remote video kits, showing speakers how to avoid microphone mishaps. Digital planners of the convention have suddenly become all important. And here's the thing about the DNC. It could have been easily overproduced. It could have easily been super glossy. We're going to send crews. We're going to bring a light kit. Or it could have been shockingly underproduced. Like, everyone's going to hold their camera like this, and it's going to be really authentic, but it could have been really shitty. And so the fact that they seem to walk that line is extraordinary. And just as one example of that. So the young man who talked about Joe Biden helping him manage his stuttering. If you were in the producer's room making a judgment about that segment, would you have taken it live, or would you have had him pre-tape it? And here's, I think, the argument you could have made. We don't want to embarrass him. It could get uncomfortable. He could get nervous. Let's tape it, because lots of other stuff is taped. Let's tape it. And that way we can control it. And instead they took it live, and it was amazing. I mean, it had your heart in your throat a little bit, but in a really good, authentic way. So kudos to the story in the New York Times. Well worth the read, and it is the top of the newsletter for this week. Moving on, the Gartner folks. So the Gartner folks do this hype cycle report, and I have to say, I read it cover to cover, expecting to know everything. It was like, yeah, I know what's hype. So I'm just going to read them down for you. There are 4 that are worthwhile, and I think you'll find them surprising. Trend number 1 is they call composite architecture. In the face of rapid changes in decentralization, organizations need to shift to more agile, responsive architecture. A composite architecture is made up of a package of business capabilities built on flexible data fabric. So there's a phrase. If you don't use it in conversation, read up on composite architecture. Number 2, algorithmic trust. I'm not going to read all these because you got the newsletter in your inbox. Number 3, beyond silicone. And number 4, formative AI. And number 5, digital me. So I like digital me as a conversation starter. And I'll just read you the first paragraph. From a health perspective, to digital twins As technology integrates with people, there are more and more opportunities to create digital versions of ourselves. These digital models represent humans both in real and virtual worlds. So is there a digital me? Do you have a digital me? I guess this is a digital me, I guess. Hadn't thought of it that way. But I don't have an avatar. Should I have an avatar? Maybe I should. I don't know the answer to that question. By the way, we are live on Facebook and YouTube. So if you have comments, just jump in the comments and I'll try and share them with the audience and add them as we talk through the rest of the newsletter. All right, moving on. Another Times piece. This is Innovating from Home. This is Maker Week at the New York Times. And it's literally a period of time when the New York Times gives its team the ability to go out and build things. And it's just, I don't need to go through them all. They're all interesting. But just looking at the projects they've built is fascinating. And, the Times is absolutely leaning into being, much more than a news organization, but a data-driven, technology-driven organization. And as some of you may know, we just finished this summer a project with the R&D team at the New York Times, who were fantastic to work with. And, I expect you'll see more things from us and them together in the future. All right, next up, an article from Nieman Labs. This one is a bummer. It literally is the Gannett newsrooms looking at the communities they serve and seeing them as dramatically whiter. And Gannett, the headline from Nieman is, they pledge broad changes by 2025. Yeah, that's a long time from now. So Gannett says it will make its workforce as diverse as the country by 2025 and expand the number of journalists focused on covering issues related to race, identity, social justice, and equality. Well, good for them, but I wonder why it took BLM for them to figure out that their newspapers didn't reflect their communities. This is an important read and one worth sharing. Couple more. Tencent. This is from notboring.substack.com. You're seeing more and more Substack newsletters turning up in your inbox, I suspect. Tencent is complicated, worth a read, interesting. They own big chunks of the digital economy. And as the White House expands its attack on Chinese ownership, starting with TikTok and expanding beyond that, I think you're going to see the Tencent story. This is the beginning of the Tencent story, certainly not the end. A nice clip from Facebook showing an ad to 95% of women and the question of whether or not that's a problem. And this is from Vox. This is a What We're Watching video. And let me save you the read. Yes, it's a problem. I mean, yes, it's a problem. And then finally, a podcast. It may be you're already a listener to a number of the WNYC Studios podcasts. If you aren't a listener to Trump Inc., highly recommend. I think we've talked about it in the past on this live stream. It's incredibly well reported. Andrea Bernstein and her team are very detailed, and this is a deep dive into the Hatch Act. And I have to confess, I mean, I'm a news consumer at scale. I think a lot of us read and listen to a lot. I have heard the phrase the Hatch Act many times, and I think I thought I understood what it was, but it turns out I didn't. So this is a story both about kind of the role of government and the role of private sector and when they bump into each other. And then obviously the Trump administration is part of that. But it's a well-told story and a good read, and I highly recommend it. And then last but not least, this is a Harvard Business Review story. What happens when AI is used to set grades? How would you feel if an algorithm determined whether your child went to college? And, you know, Harvard Business Review is well written, it's thoughtful. Sometimes it's a little highfalutin, but in this case, you know, it in a really practical way digs into the complexity of AI and what it can do, and I mean, how would you feel, just by way of example, if your doctor said, I can't write this prescription because it won't be covered by your insurance, and you found out that decision was made by a machine? Entirely likely. So also a terrific read and relevant for the week ahead. So with that, just to wrap things up, definitely big thumbs up to the DNC for pulling off 4 nights of television/web programming that was both authentic and diverse. And if you, just by way of example, I think everyone has kind of come to the conclusion that that roll call, which historically would have been done at the convention in an afternoon, no coverage, was a really good way visually to tell the story of America and its diversity by going around the world, around the country, and letting each state say something about where they are and who they are. Still don't fully understand Rhode Island and calamari, but so be it. That being said, I think you're seeing some things in the DNC convention that probably will become more the future of virtual events, and certainly the DNC. I don't think we're going to be going backwards. I mean, there may yet be a room with a balloon drop, but whoever thought of flashing car lights and emergency lights and fireworks as a replacement, kudos to you. So with that, read the newsletter. We always like hearing from you. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever you find us. And a huge shout out to our friends at the Edge Group who help us produce the newsletter every week, our fantastic curators and really good partners. And with that, we are out of time. So have a good weekend. Enjoy the newsletter. We'll see you next week.